Welcome back to Kubernetes Crashcasts. I'm Sheila, and as always, I'm joined by the knowledgeable Victor. Before we dive in, I'd like to remind our listeners that if you're enjoying our show, please rate us on your podcast platform. It really helps us reach more people who want to learn about Kubernetes. For those new to the show, Kubernetes is a powerful system for managing containerized applications. Now, let's get into today's topic: installing Kubernetes locally. Victor, are you ready to guide us through this exciting journey?
Absolutely, Sheila. I'm excited to help our listeners understand how they can get started with Kubernetes right on their own machines. This is a crucial step for anyone looking to learn and experiment with Kubernetes without the need for cloud resources.
Great. Before we begin, I have a quiz question for our listeners. What's the minimum amount of RAM typically recommended for running a local Kubernetes cluster? Don't worry, we'll reveal the answer at the end of the episode. Victor, any thoughts on this question?
That's an interesting question, Sheila. It really gets to the heart of one of the challenges of running Kubernetes locally: resource requirements. Without giving away the answer, I can say that it's important to consider that Kubernetes itself needs resources, and then you need additional resources for the workloads you'll be running. It's a balancing act between having enough power to run everything smoothly and not overwhelming your development machine.
Excellent point, Victor. Now, let's start with the basics. What exactly do we mean by installing Kubernetes locally?
Great question, Sheila. Installing Kubernetes locally means setting up a Kubernetes cluster on your personal computer or laptop. It's like creating a miniature version of a full-scale Kubernetes environment that you might find in a production setting. This local installation allows developers, DevOps engineers, and anyone interested in Kubernetes to experiment, learn, and develop applications without needing access to a cloud provider or dedicated servers.
That sounds really useful. I imagine it's great for learning and testing. But how do we actually do this? Are there specific tools we need?
Absolutely. There are several tools available for setting up Kubernetes locally. The three most popular options are Minikube, Kind, which stands for Kubernetes in Docker, and Docker Desktop with Kubernetes enabled. Each of these tools has its own strengths and use cases.
Interesting. Could you tell us more about one of these tools? Let's start with Minikube, since I've heard that name before.
Certainly. Minikube is often considered the go-to tool for local Kubernetes development. It creates a single-node Kubernetes cluster inside a virtual machine on your computer. The great thing about Minikube is that it provides a real Kubernetes environment, complete with all the standard features you'd expect in a full cluster.
That sounds handy. How would someone go about installing Minikube?
The installation process for Minikube is relatively straightforward. First, you need to ensure you have a hypervisor installed on your system. This could be VirtualBox, Hyper-V on Windows, or HyperKit on macOS. Then you can download and install Minikube using a package manager like Homebrew on macOS or Chocolatey on Windows. After installation, you can start your cluster with a simple command. It's almost like setting up a miniature Kubernetes theme park on your computer.
I love that analogy. It really helps visualize what we're doing. Now, you mentioned other tools like Kind and Docker Desktop. How do they compare to Minikube?
Great question, Sheila. While Minikube creates a virtual machine, Kind, Kubernetes in Docker, takes a different approach. It runs Kubernetes nodes as Docker containers, which can be lighter on resources and faster to start up. Docker Desktop, on the other hand, provides a simple checkbox option to enable Kubernetes, making it incredibly easy for those already using Docker for development.
That's fascinating. It sounds like each tool has its own advantages. Are there any particular challenges or limitations when running Kubernetes locally that our listeners should be aware of?
Absolutely, Sheila. The main challenges revolve around resource limitations. Local Kubernetes setups can be quite resource-intensive, especially if you're running multiple nodes or complex applications. This can slow down your machine or even cause stability issues if you're not careful. Another limitation is that local setups might not fully replicate all aspects of a production environment, especially when it comes to networking or storage configurations.
Those are important points to keep in mind. Do you have any tips for our listeners to make the most of their local Kubernetes experience?
Certainly. First, start small. Begin with a single node cluster and simple applications before moving on to more complex setups. Second, be mindful of your resource usage and clean up unused resources regularly. Finally, don't be afraid to experiment. That's the beauty of a local setup. You can always tear it down and start over if something goes wrong.
That's great advice, Victor. Oh, and before we forget, let's reveal the answer to our quiz question. What was the minimum recommended RAM for running a local Kubernetes cluster?
Ah yes, the quiz question. The typically recommended minimum RAM for running a local Kubernetes cluster is 4 GB. However, for a smoother experience, especially when running multiple services, 8 GB or more is often suggested.
Thank you, Victor. Now, let's wrap up with a quick summary of what we've covered today. We've learned that installing Kubernetes locally allows us to experiment and learn without needing cloud resources. We discussed tools like Minikube, Kind, and Docker Desktop for setting up local clusters. We also touched on the installation process, compared different tools, and highlighted some challenges and best practices. Remember, starting small and being mindful of resource usage are key to a successful local Kubernetes experience.
Excellent summary, Sheila. I hope our listeners feel inspired to try setting up their own local Kubernetes clusters. It's a great way to get hands-on experience with this powerful technology.
Absolutely, Victor. And to our listeners, we hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, please consider supporting us by visiting crashcasts.com, joining our Discord community, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support helps us continue creating content to help you on your Kubernetes journey. Until next time, happy clustering.